This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com. Let's keep it going. I'm just fascinated looking back at some of these old names. Let's talk about the actual show we're here for, In Your House.
Which one?
Fucker. The first match is Bret Hart and Hakushi, and this is Bret's first match of the evening. Later in the show, he also has to wrestle Jerry Lawler. We haven't spent a ton of time talking about Hakushi. I'm really excited that we get a few minutes to talk about him here. I have to admit, I was a big fan of this guy's look and presentation when he popped up in ECW like 3 years later. That was cool, but I knew him mostly from watching old Japanese tapes. How did he make the transition to coming over and being a part of the WWF?
J.J. Dillon had seen Hakushi in Japan and had talked about how this guy walked the ropes and what an incredible athlete that he was, and the unique look and the tattoos all over his body. We had seen him work over there, and the guys that he was working with were a bit smaller, but you didn't have any perspective. You didn't know how big Hakushi was compared to a lot of the talent that we had. And Hakushi was working with much smaller talent in Japan. So everything we saw, he looked like a big guy. And then he came, and he wasn't that big of a guy. A tremendous talent. Very gifted, very young. And we had to bring in Akio Sato to be his manager to just kind of help him get around because he didn't speak English, didn't read English. And we had Sato be his manager to just kind of help him out here in the U.S. and help teach him English. And Hakushi was good with his studies. He actually would study and would try to learn the language and try to read and write and what have you. But I think that probably the biggest detriment was his size. And him coming in, we were really looking for him to be this big, vicious heel. And I think initially upon seeing him, it was kind of like, God, is anybody going to believe it? Go back to they'll believe it if they see it. So he came in. I was a big fan of his. Even after seeing him, meeting him, I thought, wow, here's a guy that is dedicated to his art. I love the look and the presentation. And I thought we could have done a lot more with him. And Bret, while Bret worked with him, I think that Bret kind of felt that, I don't want to say that it was beneath him, because he didn't. And because Bret liked him. But I think Bret felt that Bret should have been working with more top tier guys.
Well, we'll talk about the match and the pairing here, but you said something earlier where you said that, we knew about the tattoos. I've always been led to believe that, and these were temporary, but I've always been led to believe that was a WWF thing. Like the look is very similar, but adding the writing all over him was sort of homage to, a Japanese folk character who had sort of a similar series of markings on his body. But I think that was a WWE thing. Do you think he would have presented that idea, or do you think someone?
No, he did it in Japan.
Okay.
We completely ripped it off from him doing it in Japan. We liked it. We liked that look. And he had been doing it over there, which is what kind of drew our attention to him. He was unique.
One of the things that he did that you said the phrase, we ripped it off. A lot of people would say, oh, this top rope walk, Undertaker's already doing that. Whenever someone does something that's similar to the Undertaker, it feels like they need to get their blessing. I think somewhere along the way, even before the Austin 316 shirt hit with the smoking skull on the back, I think that Austin needed to go get permission from the Undertaker to do that. And of course, Taker was, hey man, good by me, go make your money. I don't own skulls. But within this sphere, this little WWF world, we've heard that's not always the case, so if somebody comes over and they're Hurricane Helms, but their WCW name was Shane Helms. Well, you can't be a Shane. We already have a Shane. Okay. We're going to call you something else. Was there a concern or an issue with him doing his sort of praying rope walk, which is one of the things that made Undertaker matches so unique and special at the time?
No, there wasn't. And it was even, talk about having a match with Undertaker and having a program with the Undertaker. So that was something that was discussed because of the similar styles and in some ways a similar gimmick. It was similar yet different.
It's funny that you say that, because I think Jim Johnston at StarCast, I think he was asked about this, or maybe it was just off air. I don't know. I heard it from him at StarCast that the two ideas were, or the idea for Hakushi was he was supposed to be like the polar opposite. He was the total like bizarro version of the Undertaker. So whereas the Undertaker is dark, he's light. And so he even tried to make the music sort of feel that way, sort of, in presentation, just a yin and yang, if you will, if that makes sense.
To a point, yes. I mean, it was more than anything kind of a Japanese version, and they were very similar, but at the same time different.
Well, the other thing that you do here is, I assume you put him with a manager, because that's just what you do in this era when there is a Japanese heel. But you probably needed a mouthpiece for him, even though he's still trying to learn the language. It's not like he can come in and cut a Ric Flair promo. What can you tell us about Shinja?
Well, he's just Kiyo Sato from Kansas City, and Sato had been a mainstay in Kansas City, and I believe he had worked for All Japan, looking for a job, and he was a liaison to the Japanese offices in the States, and he was the perfect guy because we were going to be using Sato as one of our liaisons to, our entry into Japan as well during this time. So he could do double duty. What
is a Shinja, I guess is what I'm driving to.
It's a goddamn manager of Hakushi. The fuck what Shinja? You just asked me what Shinja was. See, goddamn manager of Hakushi. You don't know how many different fucking versions of Hakushi you could get to with different people. Hakushi. Yeah, Hakushi. Yeah. Just depends.
Well, it's fun for Sato. I mean, he had like a on again, off again relationship with you guys during this era. But when he pops up here in late 94 with Hakushi, a lot of people are excited about what this might be, but as we know, he's not long for this world. His last TV appearance is in July of 95. So not too much longer after this show. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.